Aging is often viewed with a sense of trepidation. It can be surrounded by stereotypes and misconceptions, but we're here to challenge and change that narrative. What if the rest of your life could be the best of your life? So we'll be speaking to someone that I admire so much, Cheryl Richardson from CherylRichardson.com. She is a New York Times bestselling author. You may have seen her on Oprah, The Today Show, Good Morning America. I was a massive fan before I became a friend, and she has recently recorded an audio workshop called Self-Care for the Wisdom Years. I always have the best time speaking with her. Cheryl, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Jess.
Hi.
I was just thinking when you said that, remember when we first met, we recorded, I think Nick was there too, like a video about tapping, like, I don't know, 25 years ago?
Oh my goodness. Yes. It was for our documentary film. We started by making a film about tapping, and I was thrilled when you said yes and shocked. And it's amazing to see how it's evolved. And I love how we meet every year because your tapping is such a great compliment to your work. And it really feels like a marriage made in heaven. And so today we're going to dive deep into your knowledge and work around how we view aging and also support ourselves with the tapping. So let me ask you first, like, what are some of the biggest misconceptions around aging?
Well, I can really, in some ways, primarily speak personally that, it's all downhill from here. I mean, the things that I grew up hearing or, just sort of experienced in our culture that, that life winds down and gets more challenging as we get older, that menopause is like a horrible time in women's lives, which makes me insane when I hear that we lose relevance, we lose value as men and women, that we're just not as vibrant and alive and, useful in society. And, we don't really honor an elder community in our culture here, particularly in the United States. And so it really does feel like a winding down of one's life, when in fact, my experience has been quite the opposite. It's been a kind of winding up in a different way, with more of a focus on depth and wisdom and my self-care at a whole other level. And a chance to kind of pull energy back from the outer world and invest it more in our inner lives so that we are present in such a way that gives us a daily experience of real magic happening in our lives. I know that sounds kind of, I don't know, light, but what I mean is we've all had those moments, I know you have, Jess, where, you're driving in the car and a song comes on and all of a sudden you're just brought right into the present moment and you feel this overwhelming sense of gratitude or love or connection to all that is, and your mind and your heart gets flooded with this feeling of just of deep fulfillment and meaning. Kind of like a sense of aliveness, really. And my experience is that as we get older, if we age with a commitment to our own consciousness and our own inner work, when we give more attention to our inner lives, we can really challenge all of the beliefs that we've been flooded with, and have that kind of experience more and more where we feel deeply grateful for our lives and really plugged into life.
Yes. It's so powerful because we do get those messages over and over again from our society that, it only goes downhill from here. And sometimes we can play that game within our own mind. Like I noticed, I have 2 kids. I'm very much have the grandparents, my parents, and have my younger children. And I noticed there was this period of time, Cheryl, when I was fantasizing about my time in New York City when I was single. And I was just like, oh, the freedom and like, oh, the joy. And I had a friend visit me who I used to spend a lot of time with in New York. And I was telling him, I was like, part of me sometimes like really misses that. And he's like, do you remember how anxious we all were? Because we didn't have any stability and certainty in our lives. We didn't know who we were. Like, do you remember that anxiety? And I was like, oh my goodness, you're right. I've created a fantasy when really who I am today, growing older, I do feel like I have a stronger foundation. But we can do this thing where we think like, oh, we like fantasize about the past as if the best years can't be in front of us.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The older I get, the more I understand individuals and how, the more I appreciate that you have to work with each individual human being because we're all so different. And some of us are very past-oriented. My husband's very past-oriented, so he will often turn to the past to inform his present and future. I'm very present-oriented. I don't remember a lot of the past because I figure I've already done that. Like, I'm here now, let me focus on here. So I say that because, some people are going to be more apt to remember the good old days as they get older, and then certainly there are things in our life. There's nothing like motherhood to trigger memories of being single, right? There's nothing like being married for a long period of time. My husband and I will joke about how sometimes we'll fantasize about what it was like to be single and to live alone and to be dating. I love that we can talk about those things. As we age, as we really do the inner work, and when I say that, what I mean is engage in any of the activities that turn our attention from the outer world to the inner world, to our own inner world. Writing in a journal, meditation, therapy, coaching, workshops that are oriented around our own personal development. As we engage in those activities, reading books that are teaching us about ourselves or that we find new parts of ourselves in. And certainly the tapping as well, which brings us back to the present moment and helps us to release some of the past experiences that we get stuck in. All of those things give us an opportunity to feel good about the passing of time, as crazy as that sounds. My experience as a coach for a long, long time, 25, 30 years, is that most people really fear or are uncomfortable with the passing of time. New Year's Eve, a birthday, like any kind of marking of I'm getting older. Most people are uncomfortable with that because they're not truly living now. So we'll go back to the past if we're unhappy with the present, or we'll go into the future if we're unhappy with the present. And I'm saying that the more you learn to be right where you are and to deal with the reality of the fears about aging, which we can talk about and tap on, to deal with the reality of grief that happens as we get older and have to say goodbye to things, how we look, the color of our hair, energy levels, physical capability, mobility, whatever it might be. So we're not denying reality in our feelings, but the more we face those things and use this time of aging to become more deeply connected to ourselves, the more we celebrate the passing of time. Like when New Year's Eve comes, I'm like, you know what? This past year has been a roller coaster in the most wonderful way because I've had all kinds of experiences. I can't wait to see what next year holds.
Yes. I love that. Oh, that's such a great point. The passing of time. Like, are we getting triggered by that birthday? Are we getting triggered by New Year's? And many of us are. It's such an interesting thing to reflect on. I would love to do some tapping on the fear, on any maybe uncomfortable feelings we have about aging.
Sure, we can do that. Sure, let's do that. So, let's see. So I always, I love tapping, and I just use my intuition as we go. It's not like I prepare anything, but I have some ideas. So let's just, everybody just get into a comfortable present moment state. You might want to close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing that. And one of the ways to come back to the present is to just notice your body in space. Feel what you're sitting on or lying on. You might feel your feet on the floor. You can also use your senses to bring you back to the present moment. Notice what you hear, what you smell, what you feel. You can use that to come right back to the present. And in this place, I want you to imagine drawing toward you any of the fears, concerns, anxiety, beliefs, experiences related to the downside of aging, your fear of aging, your discomfort with aging. It might even be one experience, something someone said to you, or a wrinkle you noticed in the mirror and you thought, oh my God, it's all over, right? Whatever it might be, just imagine drawing these fears and anxieties toward you. Don't worry, we're going to get you out of it very quickly, but just draw them toward you. And when you bring the energy of fear around aging into your field, notice on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being, I feel completely at peace, and 10 being, I'm really anxious and aggravated and afraid of aging. Just notice where you fall on that scale. Just take note of that number, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes and just follow along. So we can go to the karate chop spot. Even though I'm afraid of getting older,
Even though I'm afraid of getting older,
I love and accept these feelings.
I love and accept these feelings.
Even though I'm anxious about aging,
Even though I'm anxious about aging,
I love and accept these feelings.
I love and accept these feelings.
Even though I get afraid that I'll be irrelevant,
Even though I get afraid that I'll be irrelevant,
that I'll get lost in the world,
that I'll get lost in the world,
that no one will pay attention to me,
that no one will pay attention to me,
and that the inner critic in my head will get louder,
and that the inner critic in my head will get louder,
I choose to feel peaceful and calm.
I choose to feel peaceful and calm.
Right, let's go to the eyebrow spot. I'm afraid of getting older.
I'm afraid of getting older.
Side of the eye, what does life have in store for me now?
What does life have in store for me now?
Under the eye, I'm anxious about aging.
I'm anxious about aging.
Nose, I don't feel comfortable with getting older.
I don't feel comfortable about getting older.
Chin, I dread getting older.
I dread getting older.
Collarbone, I've been too influenced by the beliefs of others.
I've been too influenced by the beliefs of others.
Under the arm, people have taught me to hate the idea of aging.
People have taught me to hate the idea of aging.
Top of the head, I can't find anything good about aging.
I can't find anything good about aging.
Great, go back to here. I'm willing to change my beliefs about aging.
I'm willing to change my beliefs about aging.
Side of the eye, I'm willing to let go of this anxiety.
I'm willing to let go of this anxiety.
Under the eye, I'm open to learning to find the goodness about aging.
I'm open to learn about the goodness of aging.
Great, nose. I might even love getting older.
I might even love getting older.
Chin, I don't think that's possible.
I don't think that's possible.
Collarbone, but I'm willing to entertain the thought.
But I'm willing to entertain the thought.
Under the arm, I am safe.
I am safe.
Top of the head, it's safe to get older.
It's safe to get older.
Knee up there could actually be joyful.
It could actually be joyful.
I'm open to it being joyful.
I'm open to it being joyful.
Great. And then close your eyes and take a breath. And when you take a breath, tune into the energy in your body and notice if you can feel the energy moving around in there. Sometimes people will feel energized. Some will feel calmer. Some people feel like they're spinning. Just notice the energy. And then do your best to call in, once again, the anxiety, the fears of aging. See if you can pull that back into your field. And notice on a scale from 1 to 10 if it's changed at all.
Thank you for that experience.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You know, what I love about tapping is oftentimes your mind wanders in the most intentional ways. Like I was tapping, I just remember having when I had Lucia, I was 35. And when you turn 35, they treat you like you're this old pregnant woman. It's a switch. It's like 1 year before, it's slightly different. You have 1 year, and I am completely aware that I am still very young. But it was interesting to think, like, what are the messages? Like, what if this isn't me? What if this isn't mine? Like, the messages that we start to get as we turn 30 and 40 and 50, what if the things that we're saying to ourselves aren't even us? And we can just be like, not subscribing to that.
Yeah. Well, it's true. I had one of my closest friends was a decade older than me. And she always had a very positive attitude about aging. And she was a fashion model. And so, she had been on the runways in Paris and, major cities, and was really, she was from Argentina, by the way. Tall, beautiful, full of life. And, really, her work was all about how she looked. And yet she loved the whole idea of getting older, and in particular, menopause. So she used to always speak about the freedom of menopause and how much she loved that time in her life. And it wasn't until I reached menopause and then, started heading towards 60 that I realized I had been deeply influenced by her beliefs and her constant conversation about how wonderful it is with each passing year, how, viva to life, I forget how she would say it. You would know, you speak Spanish, but she just would celebrate life. And it's true. We're all a composite of the beliefs that have been installed in us by going all the way back to parents, teachers, friends, university, schools, work environments. And this is a part of conscious aging when we begin to recognize, oh, wait a minute, who I thought I was is this compilation of beliefs and behaviors and habits called the personality, Cheryl, but who I really am inside is a soul that is uninfluenced by any of those things. And so this is the beauty of aging in the way that Joseph Campbell talked about it. Joseph Campbell, who's been an enormous comfort to me, in that he said, when we reach midlife, it's a time for us to begin to more consciously invest our energy in our inner life. We start to balance it. The whole outer world has been the main focus. Now we've got to start pulling things in. And he said that, most people say that what they hunger for, especially later in life, is more meaning. But in fact, what he believed, and I believe this, I've come to truly understand this, is that what we really long for is more aliveness. And aliveness comes from the connection we have to ourselves as souls in the present moment. And so that's why it's such an important practice to use aging to our advantage. And can I just say something about the stages of aging that I think are helpful? Because I know you're a lot younger than I am, Jess, and you mentioned 30s, 40s, 50s. Well, I'm now 64, and so we can look at 60s, 70s, and 80s, because we're all going to be there, hopefully, 90s, 100. You're going to probably live longer than my generation because of the medical advancements. But I often turned toward Hinduism, where they look at something called the 4 ashramas, which is 4 stages of life. And the first stage is the student phase, the student stage of life, where we're growing and learning from our parents. You see this with your children, going to school, learning about how the world works, how life works, how we operate in the world. The second stage is the householder stage. This is what they call it. And this is the stage where we build families and careers, and we invest in the outer world. The third stage is really more, they would call it the hermit stage, where we start to withdraw our energies. You know what? In America, we don't like that idea of, no, I don't want to do that. But the reality is, I see that as recognizing that our energy, our time, our attention is precious. So that when we get to this third stage, it becomes a powerful self-care stage where we start to reevaluate things like, how am I spending my time and energy? What's getting my attention? And is my self, capital S, being fed by all that's getting my time, attention, and energy? And we start to withdraw energy from the things that are not fueling us or giving us things like freedom and peace, which become extremely important later in life. We start to withdraw our energy so that it's not so much becoming a hermit, but pulling ourselves back from the outer world, creating more of a balance. And the fourth stage is, they would call it the wandering recluse stage. But it's really the stage where we make our spiritual lives become far more important because we're preparing ourselves for the transition out of the physical body. So you're in the householder stage, right? You've got small kids, you're building your family. It's so important for you to be having this conversation at your age so that you can prepare for the next stage in your life in a way that not only serves you, but serves your family, serves the work you do in the world, brings a more authentic version of you underneath the personality, the achiever, the ambitious one, whatever it might be for whomever. The preparation is for you to be able to bring a truer version of who you are beyond the personality to your family. It's a difference between, and I know you know this, and I know everybody listening knows this, it becomes the difference between crabby, negative elders who, are just so kind of concretized in their personality that they're difficult to deal with, and the wise elder, which, by the way, in the third stage, a lot of time, meaningful time, is spent sharing wisdom. Like I spend a lot of my time just sort of mentoring and guiding people, not for anything, not for money, not for fame, not for advancement of my career, but simply as an elder sharing some of the wisdom from my experience. And I'm hoping that when I'm 80 or 90, that the people in my life would actually really enjoy being around me, not feel burdened by me because I haven't done my work and I'm bitter and angry, which, let me just say, the generations that have come before me, the bitterness and anger comes from very real and noteworthy reasons that we don't have a history of personal growth and self-reflection. We have a history of hard work, sucking it up, and just pushing through. And at the end of your life, that's a really tough pill to swallow when you realize I've been sucking it up and being who everybody else wanted me to be instead of who I really am. So, sorry, that's a long conversation about aging, but this is a relevant conversation for people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, 70s, and 80s will go, yeah, I totally get what she's saying here.
I find it fascinating, the phases. And the biggest thing I'm taking away is, can we look forward to things? Because we don't have that conversation. No one's talking about the next phase and how great it is as well. And so even that shift of being like, can the best of my years be the rest of my years is the key, like your Argentine friend. It changes that attitude of hope, of looking forward with excitement, changes the way that we show up in the present moment.
With the assumption, with the understanding that we are aging. You know, I was doing an interview with someone and we were talking about aging, the wisdom of aging, right? Or the wisdom years. And during the interview, she said something to me. I forget what it was, something like, I said I was in my early 60s, and she said something like, well, Cheryl, that's not really old. And I said, actually, it is. I mean, depends on how you define old, but I'm not a kid anymore. I've got more years behind me than ahead of me. And my point is, our mortality can be our greatest gift because it's what inspires us to have these conversations. Right now, we live in a culture of anti-aging and longevity. Look at all the best-selling books. Everybody wants to live forever. Well, I hate to tell you, but you're not going to. The good news is you can have strength and health and mobility for a long time, and I think that's extremely important. It's a priority for me. It's one of my self-care priorities right now and has been for quite some time, so that we can enjoy aging because we're still vital and mobile and alive. But once again, as Joseph Campbell says, we're all like cars, and eventually the bumper falls off or the muffler gets rusted out, and you fix things and you strengthen things, but at some point the car's just going to die. It's just going to
Yeah.
die, you know?
Well,
So
and facing your own mortality makes you stop wasting time. It makes you stop pushing yourself aside when you realize, like, I don't have forever to always be sacrificing myself and doing things I don't like to do and living a life that I don't like to have. Sometimes it gives you that, your own mortality can give you the sense of pressure that could actually work in your advantage, where you realize, like, I'm tired of wasting time not being myself. Let's talk a little bit about that aspect of it, that self-care, that reclaiming what we want for ourselves.
So if we think of the third stage, you know, who knows, maybe there'll be 7 stages, you know, decades from now, I don't know. But if we think of this, the stage beyond the householder stage, let's say, as a time of self-care, it means that we begin to restructure our lives. So for me, for example, you know, getting into the gym a minimum of 3 days a week for strong weightlifting, like weight-bearing exercise, you know, not wimpy exercise, like serious, like working to strengthen my muscles so that I know, you know, when I started out, I was using X amount of weight for a back squat, and now, you know, it started out as 20 and now it's 100, or like, so really building bone and muscle and strength for longevity and mobility is a priority for me. Nothing gets in the way of that. It doesn't, I no longer fight with myself like, oh, will I go to the gym one night? No. That's just a given. So we have to look at how we're going to reprioritize our time. And yes, this is when our mortality is a real gift, because we start to pay attention to, how am I using my time? What is it that's going to, what are the most important things right now? So physical health is important, you know, improving your diet. I mean, this is such an important topic alone, Jess, because the older you get, at least in my experience, and my husband, who is a fitness expert and has been working with people for 40 years, always says the older you get, the harder it is to put habits and behaviors in place to take good care of your health. So the earlier you make it a priority, the better. So things related to the body, yoga, stretching, mobility, you know, they say motion is lotion, really important as we get older. So taking care of the physical body. Beginning also to look at our relationships, reevaluating who we spend our time with. You know, one day I was driving in the car with my friend Bruce, who's like my spiritual brother, and we were talking about how much we loved each other and what a great time we have when we're together. And I said to him, why don't we do this more often? We always say we love being together, but we end up getting together maybe once every couple of months. And that day I realized when I got home that when I looked at my schedule, I was spending a lot of time with acquaintances. I was spending time, not a lot of time, but time with acquaintances and friends. But it made me realize I may need to pull back on socializing with some of the people in my life to devote more of my time and energy to deepen the relationships with the people that feel like soul family. And that's another important thing that we do. And honestly, Jess, we reached a point where it's like, if you're negative, chronically negative, if you're always draining my energy, if you're bitching and complaining about the same thing all the time, it might be time for us to either have an honest conversation or for that relationship to change. So we reevaluate our relationships. We reevaluate the work that we do. You know, I was recently coaching a gentleman who was 65 years old in a job that was incredibly stressful. And he was talking about the next 5 years, how, you know, he was planning his exit in the next 5 years. And I said to him, whoa. Do you realize you're 65 years old? You could be dead in 5 years. And there's a good chance you might be dead given the pace that you're working at and what's going on with your health. Don't you think we should reevaluate how you're working now? And I saw his eyes when I first said that to him, because he was in denial about aging, which a lot of us are. And then he thought he had forever, like, oh, the next 5 years. I'm thinking, buddy, if you keep at this pace, your health's going to suffer. It already was. But 5 years from now, you're going to have limited options if you don't do something now. And we spent a year, you know, where all of a sudden that transition plan went from 5 years to 1 year. For his particular situation, it was the right thing to do. So we reevaluate our work. We reevaluate everything, how we spend our time. You know, are we doing the things we've said we really want to do?
Yeah. you know, in the workbook, I'm going to include some of these journal prompts because it's so important for us to have that time to reflect. Though as we get these answers, there is that other part of, can I begin to say no? Can I? And this is just what I love about this conversation, is that it's so practical. It's like, let's deal with what is, and let's also open ourselves up to the possibilities. And still, there's a moment when you have to say, I can't do that. I have to work out. I have to make time for my body. Or I can't do that. I have to make time for someone else. And those decisions, if you spent your life always putting other people's needs and desires before yours, can be very tough and uncomfortable. What advice do you have for someone who's having that wake-up call that they need to make those changes?
So first of all, just generally, I would say most people could use to clear about 50% off of their plate. That comes from a lot of experience. That's not just a nice idea. Secondly, what prevents people from saying no, one of the main reasons people have a hard time setting boundaries, saying no, is they lack the language to do so gracefully. I've probably talked about this for years during our conversations. It's still relevant. It still continues. So let me give you some examples. If people email me and invite me to an event that I'd rather not go to, like, first of all, if I get invited to an event, personal or professional, I ask myself, because I'm at this place in my life, is this an absolute yes? And if it's not we all know what an absolute yes is. You know, if I was going to hand you $1 million and said, hey, Jess, can I give you $1 million just because I think you're amazing? I mean, first of all, you'd be going like, okay, what's the catch? But if you knew there was no catch, you'd be going, yes, give me that. Absolute yes. But if it's not an absolute yes, then I'm going to kind of reevaluate. If I end up knowing it's a no, then my response is often very simple in an email. Thank you so much for the invitation. While I'm unable to accept, I hope you have a great time. Period. Like, everybody should write that down. Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you so much for the whatever. While I'm unable to say yes, I wish you all the best. I hope you have a great time. You know, I wish you much success, whatever it might be. I need all of those words. I'm not over-explaining. I'm not inviting debate. I'm not keeping doors open. I'm just being honest with as few words as possible. So that's important. If you have a friendship, for example, that you need to really reevaluate, like you just feel like every time I talk to this person, I feel drained afterwards, there's a couple things you can do. It depends. If you're intimidated by this person so much so that you're never going to have the conversation, you're just going to keep putting up with stuff, then do it by email, where you can say, hey, Jess, I love you. We've been friends a long time, and I need to be honest with you in order to honor our friendship. Every time you complain about your husband without doing anything about it, I leave our conversations feeling drained. I love you. If you're willing to get therapy or to do some kind of work to address this issue, I'm with you 100%. If you're not ready, I'm so sorry, but I can't have this conversation anymore. And as a caveat, you'll forget we had this conversation. I'll gently remind you if you bring it up again. That's kind of like a general conversation. It can be the same thing with people who are chronic complainers. If people are chronically toxic, I say at this point in my life, it's actually perfectly okay to just slowly just kind of, become less and less available if they're toxic in any way. I mean, if somebody's toxic, you just don't get to play in my sandbox, period. And I don't even need to tell you why. Yeah. You just don't get to do that. So being willing to say no. And the good news is, as you get older, when I hit 60, I'm telling you, two things happen. Number one, I really, really cared less about what other people think. I am sensitive. I do love people. You can hurt me with critical words, for sure. But the recovery time's really quick. So that's first of all. And secondly, I'm very forgiving of myself, so that if I say something that maybe I think I shouldn't have said, or I do something I think I shouldn't have done, I'll say to myself, sweetheart, you're 64 years old. You've been on the planet a long time. You meant no harm, because I don't mean harm. So give yourself a break and knock it off. And I will just move on to the next thing. And so, if you are inelegant in the way that you say no about something, because you will be in the beginning, we're learning a new skill, don't bother yourself with your thinking by beating yourself up for doing it. Just chalk it up to experience and move on and practice the next time.
Yes. I love that concept of recovering faster from someone else's response, especially because I think that is what's the tough part. It's like, even when we say, no, I can't make it, sometimes there's that response, that guilt, that, they're disappointed. And then you have to learn that is not mine to take on. Their reaction, their feeling is not mine.
I'm really glad you said that, because people always ask me, but how do I say no and not feel guilty? Or how do I begin to set boundaries as I get older? You feel less guilty as you get older, as you age as a conscious person. But here's the other thing. What helps you to learn to be with the guilt and anxiety and the discomfort is being with the guilt, the anxiety, and the discomfort. Now, you can tap on it, and that will be enormously helpful. So we can do some tapping on that. I want to say that growth, I'll say spiritual growth, but true personal self-growth isn't about never feeling guilty or anxious or uncomfortable again. It is that the recovery time gets shorter and shorter, number one. Number two, you also begin to recognize that the person doing the most harm to you is you with your thinking. So it's how you think about that person's response. It's replaying that person's response. Here's a great example. I very rarely read reviews, evaluations, anything. I just don't anymore. I know, it's like the Buddhists say, if you're going to take the good stuff, you're going to have to take the criticism. I'm just too old at this point to deal with that. And I made the mistake a few weeks ago of receiving some feedback that was sent to me based on some work that I did. Opening it up and beginning to read it was some feedback. And, a lot of the feedback was wonderful, as it often is for all of us, really heartfelt and meaningful. And then there was that one really nasty, mean-spirited comment. And I read it, and I felt the dagger to the heart, the little knife in the chest kind of feeling that we have, or that like, ooh, like you just feel like you got hit. That's really what it is. And then I started laughing. And I noticed I was laughing because I thought, Cheryl, you know better than to do this. You just did this to yourself. I know enough at this point in my life that, when someone takes the time to be that mean, I pushed a button. My job is to push buttons. Like, that's just kind of part of what I do, because the truth isn't always easy to hear. Hopefully I do it with grace. But the point is, my recovery was so much quicker, and I thought, it's not that I'm not hurt or sensitive, but the more we do this work, the more we really do the work of self-growth, our recovery time gets shorter and shorter, and that's pretty much all you can ask for. So the time you feel guilty should get less, unless you keep replaying in your mind, because we all are just so passionately in love with our own minds, which is the big problem. And the less we listen to the mind, the better. So let's incorporate that too into some tapping about being afraid to set boundaries, to say no, to reclaim our lives in some way.
I would love that. And if we could also bring in that conversation of like, honey, you can cut yourself some slack.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's see what we can do with that.
Let's see what comes up. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So once again, let's just come back to the moment. Always so important. Every opportunity you have to practice coming back into the present moment is one of the most important activities you can engage in. Because ultimately, as we get older, this is the primary practice. How do I come back home to myself right here? So breathe in a way that just centers you in your body. And ground yourself by feeling your feet on the floor or your body in the bed, wherever you are. Imagine turning your attention inward. You can even imagine your energy turning inward. And if you'd like, you could call in an experience, some no that you need to say, a boundary you need to set, a limit something you'd like to change that will require you to maybe disappoint someone. And again, if you'd like, on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being, I have no angst about this at all, and 10 being, it's off the chart, notice where it lands. Notice where your energy is right now. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes and go to the karate chop spot. The karate chop spot. There we go. And just tap there for a minute. Even though it's hard for me to say no.
Even though it's hard for me to say no.
Because I don't want to hurt anybody.
Because I don't want to hurt anybody.
And I don't want to feel guilty.
And I don't want to feel guilty.
I love and accept myself anyway.
I love and accept myself anyway.
Even though I feel anxious about setting boundaries.
Even though I feel anxious about setting boundaries.
Because what if people don't like me?
Because what if people don't like me?
Or they get mad at me?
Or they get mad at me?
I choose to remember that I am safe.
I choose to remember that I am safe.
Even though my mind bothers me.
Even though my mind bothers me.
When I think about setting boundaries.
When I think about setting boundaries.
Or saying no.
Or saying no.
Or disappointing people.
Or disappointing people.
I choose to feel peaceful and calm.
I choose to feel peaceful and calm.
Great. Let's go to the eyebrow spot. I hate saying no.
I hate saying no.
Side of the eye. No, I don't. I love it.
No, I don't. I love it.
Under the eye. I love saying no.
I love saying no.
Nose, but it makes me feel guilty.
But it makes me feel guilty.
Chin. It makes me feel guilty to say no.
It makes me feel guilty to say no.
Collarbone, and I love feeling guilty.
And I love feeling guilty.
Under the arm, I'm masterful at feeling guilty.
I am masterful at feeling guilty.
Top of the head, but what if I disappoint people?
But what if I disappoint people?
Eyebrow, I love disappointing people.
I love disappointing people.
Side of the eye, isn't it silly?
Isn't it silly?
Under the eye, that I turn to the very thing.
That I turn to the very thing.
Nose, that causes me trouble.
That causes me trouble.
That makes the problem.
That makes the problem.
Looking for a solution.
Looking for a solution.
Under the arm, my mind does not have a solution.
My mind does not have a solution.
Top of the head, my mind does not own me.
My mind does not own me.
Eyebrow, my mind does not own me.
My mind does not own me.
Side of the eye, I own me.
I own me.
Under the eye, I love taking care of myself.
I love taking care of myself.
Nose, I love saying no.
I love saying no.
Chin, I love setting boundaries.
I love setting boundaries.
Collarbone, boundaries protect my peace.
Boundaries protect my peace.
Under the arm, boundaries protect my freedom.
Boundaries protect my freedom.
Top of the head, boundaries tell me that I love myself.
Boundaries tell me that I love myself.
Eyebrow, I love getting older.
I love getting older.
Side of the eye, because it's easier to say no.
Because it's easier to say no.
Under the eye, I'm on to my mind.
I'm on to my mind.
Nose, it can't rule me anymore.
It can't rule me anymore.
And because I love saying no.
Because I love saying no.
Collarbone, I love setting boundaries.
I love setting boundaries.
Under the arm, I love myself that much.
I love myself that much.
Top of the head, who would have ever thought?
Who would have ever thought?
That aging
would
be the ticket to freedom.
Would be the ticket to freedom.
Great. Close your eyes and take a breath. And again, just tune in and notice your energy. Notice if anything shifted. First, feel the energy in your body. You are energy. And then tune in to the scale from 1 to 10. And notice if anything changed.
Thank you for that experience.
You're welcome.
My mind doesn't own me. That one was so powerful.
I mean, can we just take a minute to, this is really, really important. Most of us make choices and decisions in life. We think as a result about what other people are going to think or feel or surmise about us. But we're really a servant to our mind. We're more worried about what we're going to think, how we're going to speak to ourselves, and how that speaking to ourselves is going to make us feel. As you get older, as you age, you have an opportunity to truly become a friend to yourself, to become an ally, to become a loving mother or father, or a loving mother and father. And that means that you slowly and systematically dismantle the behaviors that have you paying attention to the inner voice, which is only based on history and usually negative experiences.
Yes.
So just take that in. When you're worried about Mary being upset that you're not going to have dinner with her, you're really worried about how you're going to speak to yourself after you tell Mary no. When you're worried about what your boss is going to say if you let him know that you can no longer honor 5 priorities at once, you need 3, you're really afraid of the anxiety you're going to have to sit with both before, during, and after that experience. If we cultivate a loving, committed, ongoing love affair with ourselves, all of that begins to change. And I'm very fond of saying this. I call myself sweetheart a lot. I talk to myself a lot. That day when I read that negative evaluation that was just so mean, I immediately, after I laughed at, the mistake I made at even reading any of them, I immediately went to, sweetheart, this isn't about you. Somebody just got their buttons pushed. We all do. I love you. And we got this. Let's move on with our day. And I moved on with my day. And when I caught my mind wanting to go back to it, we all do this all the time. When my mind wanted to go back to it, because I'm now an observer in my life, this is the gift of meditation. When I caught my mind doing that, I went, no, sweetheart, stay right here. Because the minute you go back and allow the mind to replay things like that, it is like jumping in a lake after a rock that's created ripples, expecting you're going to make glass. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You jump in and you just make bigger ripples. So I always say to myself, sweetheart, don't jump in the lake. Stay right here.
Yes.
Stay right here.
Maybe this will get easier as I age, but this is why I depend so heavily on tapping. I remember the other night, Lucas, my husband, was like, I think you're making it worse by thinking about it. So just don't think about it. And I was like, I can't just not think. And that's when I was like, I'll be right back. And I went to tap because it's the thing that gets me out of my head and into my body. And I need that practice because personally, when I tell myself like, just don't overthink it, don't think it, it's like I need that tool to bring me on that journey back into my body and back into the present moment.
That's, in some ways, I love it. His advice was really spot on. Just don't think about it. But that can sound so kind of like cavalier or like so glib, like, what do you mean? And your response was exactly, what do you mean don't think about it? At the highest spiritual level, that advice is actually quite wise. But if we don't understand the mechanics of what's going on, then it just sounds like denial or it just doesn't make sense to the mind because the mind wants to continue running the show. The mind is connected to the ego, the personality. It's not who we really are, but it's the closest friend or enemy we have. I love it. Who was it? I think Michael Singer once said, in Untethered Soul, his very first book, if he realized early in his life, and he was lucky in his early 20s, that if he had a roommate that spoke to him the way his mind spoke to him, he would have thrown the roommate out long ago. Yeah. And most of us are living with a pretty nasty roommate. I mean, that negative evaluation was nothing compared to what I've said to myself over the years. And I won't do that anymore. Like, hear the emphatic nature of that. When I catch myself being mean to myself, I intervene on my own behalf. So in that situation, Jess, when you start to ruminate about something, the mind wants you to believe that if you ruminate long enough, you'll feel better or you'll figure it out. That is always a lie. That's like going to the hardware store for milk. You're going to the thing that created the problem in the first place, looking for a solution. It won't happen. So the real response is, no. You want to be a fierce mother. If I was stealing one of your kids, you'd kill me to get that kid back. You want to be the fierce mother to yourself that goes, no. You don't get to talk. You don't talk to me like that. I talk to my mind as a sweet little child. Honey, you don't get to talk to me like that. No. I'm the adult. You're the kid. I have love and compassion for you, but I'm the boss and I'm running the show. And if we can start to really, especially this is the gift of aging. What I'm telling you is what I've learned through the deep commitment to age awake and alive, and to have my own personal growth be my number one priority, my personal and spiritual growth over anything else. This is what you get. You get somebody who just speaks kindly to themselves and can get themselves out of those traps more quickly. And don't we all want out of jail, right?
Absolutely. I'm thinking, I just want to loop back with that client that you worked with when he was like, in 5 years, and you realized that you needed to reevaluate things. I think when it comes to especially our health or how we want to age, we can kind of keep kicking the can down the road.
Yes.
What's your advice with that balance between, or maybe just getting that motivation? You shared something with me earlier when we were talking about this call about how seeing your father age was a big wake-up call for you and how you wanted to do it differently. And I think what I'd like to end with is that awareness of, can we begin to age with an intention in mind without just thinking like, 5 years, 10 years, but like really intentionally think about how we want to support ourselves in those later years.
Yeah. First of all, I'll say about my father. My father gave me such a gift. At the end of his life, he was, I think, 83, and his mind was sharp as a tack, filled with life, so much energy, and his body couldn't keep up. He was just like, his body was declining, because he didn't take care of himself, and for exquisitely good reasons, right? We need to understand that we develop habits and behaviors for good reasons, and unless we start checking under the hood and doing the healing work, we can't get to the root of that. The gift he gave me was seeing what it was like to move to the end of your life and then leave your physical body with so much life left. And that's when I decided there's no way I'm doing that to myself. And I've always been someone who's worked out. I walk a lot. My husband's a trainer. He's trained me years ago. But, over time I had put on weight, traveling. I had put on 25 or 30 pounds. I didn't feel good in my body. And that made me, part of my intention was, I am going to be as mobile and strong as I can for as long as I can. And I hired a trainer, started working with a therapist specifically around weight loss and eating and all of that sort of thing. And that just became a really important focus for me. And, I'm going almost 3 years, lost 25, 30 pounds, have maintained that, still work out pretty much every single day, whether it's walking or in the gym. And I love it. I'm in the gym and I listen to Michael Singer talks, actually. I love his talks. He says the same thing in every damn talk, and the reinforcement, or I'll listen to a podcast, but usually it's something related to get out of here and live here. So that's the gift that my father gave me. In terms of the intentions when we're aging, or like, being in denial, like kicking the can, as you said, I think it's really important to remind ourselves consistently of our mortality. Now, this might freak some people out, but let me just say, you're not going to be here forever. And that's what I said to this client. His circumstances were very specific. So me saying to him, whoa, you might not have 5 years, was specifically because of what was going on for him health-wise and work-wise. However, sometimes I'll lay in bed at night and I'll imagine that I'm about to take my last breath. Like literally laying in bed, it's an old Buddhist technique. I'm about to die. and I imagine that I'm dying and my consciousness or energy is leaving my body, just for the experience of meeting death closely, because we're so terrified of death. But then often afterwards, I ask myself, how would I feel about the life I've lived today or this week or last month or this year if in fact this were my last breath? And I do that on a regular basis. I especially do it if I'm feeling overwhelmed with my calendar sometimes, and I don't feel as overwhelmed as I used to, but I still get overwhelmed. Old habits die slowly. And I'll look at my calendar and I'll say, if this were your last week, what would you do and what would you not do? And I use that as a guideline to actually cancel some things or postpone some things. And I've done that consistently for the last 5 years. I want to age with a commitment to with a commitment to being awake, staying awake, facing the reality that the pain of losing energy, the wrinkles that I find, the signs of aging, the way I'm starting to lose people in my life more rapidly than before. I'm not saying, oh, let's all make it kittens and rainbows. No, but I'm going to stay awake to all of it. The aliveness, the possibility, the freedom, the peace, and the pain and the suffering and I want to be, it's like Joseph Campbell said, I want to be awake for it all. Every day is an exciting opportunity to experience life. And so if we hold that intention, just this, every year, what did we say? I am going to make the rest of my life the best of my life, period. And what the 3 things that are most important to make that happen? Some kind of practice that moves you away from thinking you're your mind, right? Meditation. Listen to Michael Singer's stuff. He gets it like few people do, I think. Some kind of meditation, a commitment to your health, and something else that's really important that just went right out of my head. Just, keeping your mortality in mind. Keeping your mortality in mind that we're not going to be here forever. And the way to make the rest of your life the best of your life, is your commitment to your own personal growth. And don't do it alone. Your best thinking got you where you are in your life. You need the thinking. This is why the Tapping Summit is so important. Listen to every single teacher. Do all the tapping. It will expand your awareness and your understanding of yourself. Get yourself into therapy if you've never done it. I've never met a human being who didn't need therapy. Nobody. The people that are the happiest have been doing work with a therapist off and on for years. So make a commitment to your physical body, your internal life, your spiritual and emotional health, and break up with your mind.
And break up with your mind. Wonderful. Cheryl, this has blown my mind. I think there's so much I love about this interview that I feel like it's changed me in the last hour of having this conversation. And it's going to be, you shared things that I'm going to sit down with my girlfriends when we have dinner, we're going to talk about. It's things that I'm going to talk about with my husband. You're really creating this roadmap to help us live a more intentional life and doing it in a way that is so genuine, because we're not denying aging. We're not trying to anti-age. We're embracing the reality while opening up to the possibility. And I'm so grateful that with where you are right now and you really clearing your schedule for yourself, that you're taking time to share this with us. This has been such a gift. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. Always, always, always wonderful to be with you.